How do you do that?
I still have to grab my water.
So you see there is this button, go live. At the bottom left corner, there is a button, go live.
Yep.
So if you click that, we'll see your screen.
Just a sec.
If we see your
Hide the naughty stuff. We don't want to see that. Okay, I'm just lighting in the mood.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing actually.
Yeah, we don't want to see the 8 or the 10 gigs of porn you got on your
Right.
The stash. Let's use code names. It's called the stash.
So I just did the screen share. Not sure if you can see that.
So I'll click join the stream, and I can see now your stream. So let's have a streamception. So don't look at my screen. Open Visual Studio. Create a new project. Just your normal flow, and this is actually what a real interview might involve, just you doing your stuff. They might ask you, so here's Visual Studio, do something for us. So your task is quite simple. I'd like to ask you, given a string which contains comma-separated integer numbers, to find a median of those numbers. So given a string of integers that are comma-separated integers, find median of those integers.
So you mean the average by median?
No, the median is you sort all of them from smallest to biggest, and you take middle one. So let's say if I have let's say I have 5 numbers, 1, 2, 5, 3, and 4. I first sort them, and then I take the middle one, which is 3. In this case, it matches average, but it doesn't have to match average.
All right.
And if it's an empty string, it should return 0. If it's null, it should return 0. If it's even number, it should return minus 1, like one number smaller. For example, if there are 2 numbers, 1 and 2, it should return 1.
You cut off there on my side.
If it's an even number, you minus.
Yeah.
So if, for example, so when I've sorted the array and I have picked the median, so the middle number, if it's an even number, then I should grab the one that's below that one, or
yes. If it's 2 numbers, for example, you take the first number. If it's 4 numbers, you take the second number.
I think he's talking about when he's pulling it from the string. Or is that what you're talking? When you're pulling it from the string, or when you're taking the median?
David?
Which one do you want the only the odds from?
So
I want to say when you're pulling it from a string, right?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so do you have a specific string in mind, or I'm free to create one for myself?
Up to you. It's now that you have the requirements, it's up to you. Make something that works for you.
Okay. Don't mind my coding, so I've never done that actually before, live coding, so yeah.
It's a good experience.
Are you supposed to be making up the string numbers? Because if that's the case,
yes,
then...
yes, it's basically to make a function that works, that does the calculation. How he makes it, it's up to him, but it needs to be demonstratable.
Is this I'd have thought there'd be more of a valid reason for the say the checking if the string's empty or if it's null. That's what I was thinking.
It's just to cover edge cases because it shouldn't break. Having that as an input shouldn't break as well. He should have multiple test cases or ways of demonstrating. It should be not a single call but multiple calls.
Mhm.
Alright.
So first of all, I've created a string in which you have numbers separated by comma. The second thing I would do is I would try to split that string using the string.split method. So I'm gonna get an array of strings, and then after that, when I do have the array of strings, I would probably have to try to parse them to cover edge cases where there could be incorrect numbers in there. So if I have, for example, a word in the string, I won't be able to parse that and put that into an array of integers, for example. So let's create something like var. It's so much harder to think when you're going live. So
You're being watched by millions.
No
Yeah.
pressure.
yeah,
Well done, well done.
let's ignore my naming convention now. We'll refactor that later. Sorry. Do I remember incorrectly, or that one is? Do we need maybe a reference? Do you mind if I Google?
Yes, it's always a good thing to do. Just don't show your history. And you're good.
I just have one screen, so you'll have to endure that.
Yes.
Just make sure they're not on the bookmarks right there.
What's that red icon with an X at the top? Okay.
Not getting it why it's not seeing that function there. Am I doing something correctly?
Yes.
Oh. No, not like this. So it wasn't a static method.
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
I myself also confuse this sometimes, so it's okay. As long as you manage to Google this up.
So we'll have an array of strings that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would need to iterate through each element of the array, try to parse each of the numbers in there, and then each of the numbers should be added to an array
Mm-hmm.
of integers. I'm just curious about something. Yeah, so the array of strings has now these elements, and what I have to do is iterate through each of the elements, try to parse each of them, and then I'll add each of them to an array. One thing I'm not sure about there is when I'm gonna actually iterate through all the elements and try to parse them one by one. We've talked about arrays being immutable,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just thinking of how I would be able to add them one by one to the. Oh, I'm stupid. Sorry. I'll need to. So first of all, I would need to create an array of integers. I need to do it like this. God, I'm so confused now. Just started using var recently and I'm more familiar with this. Or maybe let's do it this way. Why is that not accepting it?
What type of array is it?
Like this? Ah, yeah. Okay, so now that I know how long the array of integers will be, I can just use I to replace elements at index I with the parse values. And if a value cannot be parsed, then I should return, I could use 0 or something like that. But that
Let's say if it cannot be parsed, you just throw an exception. It's an error, it should fail and crash.
And then in this case, we'll do
I always make that mistake.
yeah. And then I could Well, if we just care about, so if we don't want to care about the actual outcome, so if it turns into an error and we just want the exception, I wouldn't do a lot more with this one. Yeah. So that will return a boolean whether the parse was successful or not. It says that it cannot convert. Oh, so I should do something like try was it formatted, but I think that's kind of check. So it was. Otherwise, it should return. I don't know. Is 0 fine? But
What does try parse return?
so try parse returns a boolean expression.
And what is
true or
array of
false?
integers expecting? What is array of integers at I? What type is it?
So array of integers is an array of integers, and then I is the
Right. So what does it mean when you try to assign array of integers at I to int try parse?
you're cutting off. I can do that.
What does it mean when you try to assign array of integers to try parse result? Or array of integers at I to try parse result. What do you assign? What does it expect to be assigned, and what do you assign?
Oh, I think I've made a mistake there. Maybe not.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Can you fit a square into a circled hole?
No. No, you can't.
Okay. That statement right there is basically you're putting in a square into a round hole.
Okay, so I think what the problem there is that array of integers contains integers, and what this method will return is true or false. I can't put true or false into array of integers.
Right.
So I would need to grab the result if it's true. So if the parse was successful, I should put the integer into the array at I position. If not, if it's false, then I should.
How would you check that?
You could use an if statement. Just wanted to make this kind of thing there, but let's go with an if statement. So if
Also, just from my understanding, guys, can we help him out like in situations like this, or?
If we see he's completely stuck, so if he makes no progress for 30 seconds to 60 seconds, I think it's then the time to give hints. But you know, normally in interviews they really try their best to interrupt the interviewee from writing code, because it's a part of the interview to see how they get through the situations when they get stuck.
Yeah, sure.
But I think for the time's sake, for saving time, we can.
Well, he's currently doing something good, so
Yeah, he managed the.
Yes, he's now explaining what he tried to do.
Yes, that is the essence of coding interview. Not only being able to write code, but also being able to tell what you're doing, so that if you're able to explain what you need to do. So you already parsed the result and you're trying to assign it again what is already parsed. So you already have the result
Oh,
here.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I should just use results here because it's parsed. So if I do this, then debug this thing, then it checks if the element in array of strings at I position can be parsed. So if it's true, then it will return true, and it will set the element at I to be equal to the result. So in which case
yeah.
this was 3. Yeah.
Can you zoom in your code a bit so we can see more of your screen? Thank you. More a bit. Yes, that's good. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I'm slowly making progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I actually do that, I will have my array of integers filled with parsed numbers. One case we haven't covered, if the parsing fails, then it will skip that element in the array. So if the element at the first index cannot be parsed, then it won't make it equal to the result, meaning that it should remain 0. Because I think when you have an array with, let's say, 5 elements, but you're not assigning y's to them, by default they are set to 0. So that should be an outcome there. So if I do something like this, we should see something like that happening. So cat is at the first index. It's parsing the element in the 0 index, and then it goes to the first index, tries to parse that as well. Now it returned false because the parse wasn't successful. So it's kept that, and our array of integers has a 0 at the first index, and the rest of the elements are filled correctly.
Okay. Can you now simultaneously demonstrate the case both when it's valid and when it's invalid? So can you call this what you made in a clean way without being redundant and demonstrate this functionality with a string of numbers that contains both invalid numbers and another string of numbers that contains valid numbers like you have here?
Not sure if I got the request or the question. So what would you like me to do?
In a single application run, demonstrate that the both cases work where the string of numbers has valid numbers and another case where it has invalid numbers.
So you mean like so I use Hungarian, this one shouldn't be recognized, and it's also gonna be a float, so this won't be parsed.
But overall, just different cases. Can you demonstrate different cases in one go? Because now you need to change something and change again and change again, but we want to see it all in one go.
So I'm just trying to understand what you're asking me to do. So
can we return to requirements? There's a requirement also to if string is empty, return 0.
So the validation before we do all that stuff. So
that as well.
So normally I would probably create a separate class, but let's suffice with another function there.
Great. Why static, may I ask?
Because I don't want to create an instance of the program class in order to call that.
Great.
So it's gonna be static. It's gonna return a boolean. I'm gonna call this is.
What is the requirement?
So if the string is empty,
But what
It
is the
should-
requirement to return? What do you expect it to get? What the result are you expected to get?
sorry, it should be as an integer. So it should be 0. If it's null, it should return 0 as well. So static. Normally I call them like is valid or is empty or null. Not sure how you would do that with
Call
clean
it
code standards or
call
how
it
you call
what
that.
it asks you to do. So what does it ask you to do?
Return 0 if null.
No, the
Or
full
what?
thing. The full thing. You're writing a full function. You want a function that does what is asked. And what is the whole thing that we ask you to do in short, overall?
To return a number
What is that number?
0. So return 0.
Both lines, first and second lines. So now you're writing a function just to do validation, right? Okay, carry on. Go and write what you were trying to write.
Actually, there's already a function for that. Is null or white space.
Yes.
So I could use that, but that still won't return 0. So it will still return true or false. I would-
Okay.
Mm,
If it's an even, it means -1 to the index of the middle number. That's how median works.
So what you wanted to do is to combine this empty or null check.
This is a
with-
different condition altogether. You should put in a separate line. So if it reads like this: if the string is empty, it should return 0. If it's null, it should return 0. That's it for this condition, and it's in a separate line. So you can put the last condition in a separate line in the comments. If it's an even number of numbers.
So if the length of the array can be divided by 2, meaning that it contains even numbers.
Yes.
Oh, so that's what you wanted to do. So to combine the null and the empty string check with the check that tells me whether the length of the array is even or not.
No.
Mm,
Well, I do want that to be included, but not in this function. And just continue writing what you wanted. Make it work. Ignore the last part. Or is even. You'll get to it later on. For now, just make it work that if it is a null or empty string, return what's supposed to be returned.
Okay. So I'll put that whole check here at the top.
We want 0 if it's
Oh, I'm stupid. Sorry. Let's declare that below.
so. Okay, go on. So can we go back to the requirements? Your
Yeah.
requirement is to write something demonstratable that out of a string of numbers can return a median, can find a median. And you need somehow to test, to demonstrate rather, that it works with all the cases that are there that have varying requirements. So the first case, the most simple one, does it work with an empty string? The second one, does it work with a null string? The third one, does it work when there is a single number? The fourth one, does it work when there are two numbers? And the fifth one, does it work when there are three numbers? That's all that I would expect for minimalistic scenarios for this one. And here, you're not demonstrating the functionality. Here, you're calling a main function. What are you missing? What do you think? Because main is not a function that you can call. At least not a function that you can call multiple times easily. Rather, you can, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, I'm trying to return something out of the main, whether it's voice. It should not
So
work. So
normally, and in bootcamp examples, were you writing code in main most of the time, or like you said, you would make your own class and write code there, right?
yeah.
But you
So
don't need to make your own class, and you were on the right track almost when you were writing a function. So you do need a function, but that whole function should return the result, and that's the point that you're confused about right now. So you need a function called find median that takes a string of numbers and returns an integer, the median.
So the find median function should be the one that will actually return 0 if the
Yes,
string cannot be parsed.
exactly.
So yeah, all that should go into another function like
Into the same one. It should be just renamed. It shouldn't be called a string null or empty. It should be called find median given a string of input. Yeah, you don't need this null or empty function. It's already there.
and all of that code can just go here.
Do you need the string of numbers inside the function, and why not?
No, because I can just pass that in through the
Yes.
main method. So inside the main function, I should just do something like this.
Yeah.
And this one's complaining because not all paths have return value. So all of that should be replaced.
So you no longer need that line in 23 because it's already checking that in line 18. You can press Ctrl KD to format it. Control KD.
Where would you use that? Control KD.
It formats everything, aligns properly. Not Control D, but Control KD. But you have it aligned now. Okay.
So let's just revise this. So we have the find median function, which is called from the main method. It takes in the string of numbers, which is declared just above. Then it takes in as the input string variable. It checks whether the string is null or white space. If it is, then it exits this function and returns 0. So our find median will result in 0. And that one, so that works for the null and the empty string check as well. Let's think about this one a little bit later. But
ignore that one. First, make this one work fully.
Yeah, so there I have the array of strings, which I created by splitting the input string that was passed in to the find median. The separator is the comma. Then I declare an array of integers in which we create, so we tell it that the length of the array should be equal to the length of the array of strings. And then in a for loop, we iterate through all the elements of the array of integers, and if the value at a given index in the array of strings can be parsed, meaning that it's a valid integer, then it's gonna output that into the index that we're iterating through in the array of integers. So that's gonna fill that out with the numbers themselves. And what we want to do after we have the numbers, we want to sort them in ascending order. So I could, or I probably should create a sort function and call that in the median one to not load this one with additional code.
I guess before you go into that, I would ask you that what happens if, let's say, like the 0.5, the second index on your string of numbers there, what happens if there's nothing there?
It will be 0. So when you create the array of integers, we have, let's say, 5 elements inside that, but we haven't told the code yet what value those elements hold. By default, they should hold 0. And if the number cannot be parsed, then it will skip through that given element, which means that it will remain 0, which can cause problems if we have negative numbers as well.
What about even?
Sorry?
What about an even number?
What about even number?
Because you'll want to include the 0, right? Because that's going to be in your array, and if you have like 5 zeros and then a 1, that 1 could be halfway down your array. That's what you're trying to find, the median of these numbers. So what I'm seeing is your first if statement. You're checking to see if your entire string is right there, line 18. See what you're seeing there? Right now you're checking against your string of numbers to see if it's empty. But what happens if 0.5 is empty? So you want to check your of that string. So it's the right condition, but I would probably want to put it where I'm seeing each number inside the string instead of the string itself.
Yeah. So also basically, I think if any of those given numbers, if it's invalid, it will mess up your median calculation altogether. That's what the advice is leaning towards. And what I think that should happen, if it cannot be parsed, it should just fail and throw an exception as the requirement was in the start.
Mhm.
So if you cannot parse, throw an exception.
Not sure how you call an exception, but let's find out.
If you do validate for 0, that works probably, but if it's an empty, then you'll have 2 commas consecutively, and if you split a string by that, it will be an empty string, an empty number. It doesn't explicitly say what happens when a specific number is empty. It just says what happens when the whole string is empty. So it's up to interpretation at this point. But I would prefer, and I would add to the requirements that it should throw. If it cannot be parsed, just throw an exception. If the whole string is empty, return 0. But if it cannot be parsed at a given point, just throw an exception.
So something like this. So with an else statement here.
What happens if you parse and it fails?
So if it fails, it will return false.
Can you
And-
make it fail without the return of false? Is there any other way of parsing?
Well, there's this simple parse method.
So just use this because the requirement is to fail immediately. We don't care about the exception itself. It can be failed to parse, doesn't matter. For simplicity's sake. So if you look at the input, all it asks is to take a string and it returns a number.
If you hover over parse, it will show you what the input and output of it is.
Yeah, hover over parse method. You
There
see.
you go.
Okay.
Well, I guess we could just use this one.
Yes.
So in that case, we won't even need the if statements.
Yes.
Because that's just going to fail them. It's just going to throw the exception immediately. So you use Control KD. Ah, it's nice to know. And I should probably do
Should I be the devil's advocate and bring in coding standards?
Sorry, what?
Should I be the devil's advocate and bring in coding standards right now?
Go ahead.
All right. So since you're using int parse, int is a extension off of integer 32. So the int is like to the int 32. I would use capital int 32.parse. This is it's telling me on the other end, and I see this code that it's an extension of the int 32. Wait, no, int 32 is a structure, so I guess it would be static map. Never mind. But you know what I mean, though. This is a coding standard when you're doing this.
Doesn't it say that it can be simplified if you hover it, like Visual Studio advises?
Yeah, if it does, then Microsoft their own code. They say that if you use methods like this, you want to use the capitalized class or structure.
Oh, that's your justification. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I see.
So unless their coding standards change, which I guess they could in time, who knows? Nothing's written in stone. If I see that, I'd laugh at it because I read that right off their blog in 2003.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
You also got to remember it's 2020. A lot of the coding standards are going to change, especially coming from Microsoft.
Yeah, the downside is if you're not going to use int32 anymore, then get rid of it. Otherwise, use it. That's how I would see it.
But yeah, now it seems the requirements are filled except for the return. The return is supposed to return based on the first condition, so the middle number. That is supposed to be sorted first in a
Yeah, so-
sorted.
We'll just use one there, so it's not gonna complain.
Uh,
Uh,
I
so the
really don't
next-
want you to implement the sort if you don't know how, if you don't
Uh,
remember.
I remember the bubble sort algorithm.
Okay.
So I would do passes through the array multiple times and switching items at.
Please
the-
do that then.
Yeah. So let's go into.
Surprisingly, this problem demonstrates a lot of skills, a lot of different aspects of programming, of problem solving. So it's not like, even if it's trivial, it still covers a lot. Normally, this would take half an hour, not more than that, or maybe as little as 20 minutes. But for completion's sake, we'll just allow you to finish. And yeah, we will give comments, remarks after them.
So the first thing that we should do is probably validate the array, whether it's null or empty. See if there's anything inside of that array that can be sorted.
Yeah, that's quite clean. Though in interview, that is often forgotten.
So we should skip that in this case.
You can
Or-
skip it. It's good that you mention it and that you do it. If you write real code, you'll do have this kind of validation. Some people dislike it. Some people call it defensive programming and call it the code smell, where you just guard against null in all places. But for now, skip it. So while I was saying it, you could have written it because it's simple. Doesn't take long.
So a couple of things we want to keep track of. So the bubble sort algorithm needs to count how many swaps we have done in the array of integers. If we have done 0 swaps in a given run, then that means that all of our numbers are in a correct order. So that means that we can break. If we have done any swaps, then that means that we have to keep iterating through the array again and check
Okay.
if there's anything else to sort. So let's just focus on the for loop first, and we'll create those counters afterwards. So the idea of the for loop should be is that it should iterate through the elements in the array all the way up to the element that's one less than the length of the array. So it probably has 4 numbers, then the length will be 4. We'll try that in debugging. So anyways, what we want to check if the element at the not at following index, then we wanna switch their places. So I should create a buffer, something like that, in which I store the input array I plus 1. So in the index at the the next index in the buffer, we set the value of I plus 1 to be equal to I.
For the buffer, then.
There will be. I'm just switching, I guess, things over. So the whole point of the buffer will be is that since I'm swapping two elements, by doing the swap, so by replacing one of the elements with the other, location. So this one should be in the buffer, and then input array I should be equal to the buffer. So in that case, input array I plus 1 will be stored inside the buffer, and then I grab that value, place that inside input array I, so it moved one element below, and then I set I've grabbed the item from, or the value from input array I, and I've made it, so I've placed that I plus 1, and then input array I, which is the element I have grabbed from there, is, let's do something like, so we need to keep counting how many swaps we have done. So our algorithm needs to know whether there are any elements that we have swapped or not. If there are no elements that have been swapped in our here, we make it equal to 0, and each time I swap an element, I'm gonna increment this by 1, and then at the end, if the one thing we're still missing is to set it back to 0 after each pass, so we're gonna have to, let's just do that quickly. So if number of swaps are break, do we want to break actually? Exception, let's see. So we should put that after our for loop in the find median, and then we should
then another variable for another case, because now we're changing one, and you will need to demo everything anyways, so it's done, leave it. But then I want to see if another case works. What do you do? I want to see that both cases are working.
Well, I could create.
So var won't work. You need.
Yeah. Yeah. You want me to return the one that's at the middle?
Yes, and if it's two numbers at the middle, you return the one closer to the left. So -1 to the left.
Yeah, so in this case, what we should do is I'm gonna swap the array here. I guess I should divide it by 2.
Well, to name that result, what it is, it's a median, so it's median 1, 2, 3. Because I love when, like, well, love, quote unquote, love when people call something they get from HTTP client as a response, and everything is a response, everything is a request. That triggers me a lot.
So that's one of the cases. Another case will be, this is when putting push to talk on caps lock is not helping, but anyways, so we'll call this string with.
Also, when writing tests, try to be minimalistic. Does it make sense to write 2 numbers instead of 4 numbers? Does it change anything?
Should be the same actually. So that's
so
the same.
Be minimalistic. You forgot the quotation mark.
Yeah.
You should use 3 numbers as well. So 1 number as well, if you want, for full sake. But this is fine as it is.
So the next step will be to store median 4, find median, this one, and we just have to print them out to the console. So result.
You can copy paste the previous thing. It will be fine. So you can step out.
Yeah, I think I step out too much.
Yes.
So was it? What was the
It's the sort or the last step, either of those two, because you didn't check those. Just put the breakpoint next to sort.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
You don't have to restart debugging just by putting a new breakpoint.
So there, we have received input.
Return input array send result. A breakpoint, yeah. So what do we see? Did it sort correctly? 1 and 2. It sorted correctly. Go on.
Yeah. So. Oh yeah. So yeah. So the length of the sorted array is 2, but divided through the -1 there, like this.
And then the other one?
And here, I should get rid of that one probably.
Okay.
And oh, sorry. Yeah. So the array here 1 and 2. Our test returned 1, which is correct, and our fourth test returned 2, which is correct.
Yes. So for completion's sake, you would also mix the numbers, because now you just put them in a perfect case. It's not like it's sorted already, so you don't know if your sort works, because it didn't really sort it. It just, but that's fine. I trust that it works. It seems to be fine. You did talk logically, and I think in normal interview they would even ask less than what we asked here with this assignment. Anyone else's thoughts, whoever is still in the chat? How did this go, this problem solving stage of testing it? So
that and combination of start relaxing yourself a little more. I know that being watched, and especially when you're in person, it can be daunting, but try to one of the things I usually do is just try a breathing exercise right before you start it, and right as you're explaining things. That'll help you calm yourself down a little more.
Yeah,
I was definitely stressed out. I mean, when I'm doing those homeworks, these things usually come naturally, and I don't really struggle with all those. But during this live coding part, I was just really confused, and I did mistakes that I think normally I wouldn't do.
right. And
and another thing, don't be afraid to ask questions. If you don't understand prompt, don't be afraid to say, hey, can you work your screen? Or you could sit down with them and say, hey, let's code this up, or help me with this. That'll get you to lose not your fear, but your nervousness.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Exposing yourself and talking, even talking to anyone, even if it is a rubber duck next to you. Get one if you don't already have one. It's essential tool in development.
Anything will do as a rubber ducky.
Yes, I have one right now in my hand. It's from the one.
Yeah, that's one mistake I usually bump into, is I think about how those things could be separated into separate.
Deliver.
And don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it. Code is logic. It's like streams of water. Just don't try to split it out in 15 different ways. Try to do the most common, the most modern way of programming. Just put it down.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do. Put it down. Then you can go back, wait a day. Usually I like to wait a day, come back to it before I turn it in my pull request, and just take another look at it with a fresh mind. That way you can see, okay, yep, I like the way it looks, or nope, this is horrible. I'm going to redo this, or whatever, But
Yeah.
usually when you look at code for a long time, you're going to
It
get
helps to have a bottle of alcohol right next to you while you code. But that's a different story.
yeah. They say alcohol is a good way to think of code, and then coffee is a good way to write it down. Those two go hand in hand. Mix them together, see what you get, right?
Yes.
Right.
6.7. It's better to properly implement up to step 3 than to have nothing working till step 6, even though you tried everything. It's better to do it clean for less steps than to do it incomplete and not correct for
Microsoft.
Back when AOL was a thing.
Just after that, yeah, MSN Network was becoming very, very big then. AOL was starting to get busy signals, and you couldn't dial in anymore. But yeah, that was around that time.
Yeah,
In
I
fact,
grew
I was
up
on
in that era.
Okay, yeah, I was on before AOL went. In the early '90s, you had hours you had to worry about. Yeah, those are the fun days.
Yeah, when you only had MSN and Yahoo.
with your live coding part. The last part will follow the fun part. Basically, the company sometimes says it at the start, sometimes says it in the end. They'll talk about
Middle America is going to be different than, let's say, on the coast. The coast is going to be a lot more because obviously the cost of living is a lot more.
And usually Middle America. I'm in Wisconsin.
You mean when you hit about 50,000 in America, say, and their cost of living around here, it gets, you don't have to worry about the bills much anymore. You can pay your bills. You still got to worry about saving money, right? You aren't just going to go on shopping sprees. But to me, that's a decent wage because you're still learning, and knowledge is worth a hell of a lot more than your salary. Believe me.
Right.
And so that's mainly what you want to do is your first job. You want to try to get into the door. So
of experience in this company, have this much of a raise, they'll raise it by 10% or so. They won't go this drastically, and the only way to raise it based on your skill is to leave the current job and to join the next one.
At this stage, honestly, I'm not. So I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. Yeah.
For starter,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
why-
it's okay.
Right. That's why you shouldn't sell yourself too short.
it's not cost effective. So be prepared that you're probably going to work on code that's 10, 20 years old, unless it's a startup or something that's new. But if you're going in for maintenance, which usually a junior does, it's going to be older code.
Well, even the new projects, it's up to a certain point, just a matter of years, if not months, until it becomes legacy.
I mean, right now they're talking about .NET. They won't see that for another 10 years, 5-10 years, only because they're going to look at all the security holes and that, they don't want something that's new. They want something that's secure. Why not, right? Learn some new
Right.
stuff. Keep